let's get to the good stuff because we have a battle to go through, just like the Lord of the Rings and the Star Wars. Welcome to the factory floor. If you're listening, my name is Nick. Okay. I have my two beautiful, lovely co-hosts. One of them is Corey Haynes and the other is Zach Stevens. And we are the founders of Conversion Factory. We help SaaS founders build their marketing engines. And today we're going at it. Okay. There's going to be a battle. Okay. Copy first websites versus design first websites. I have brought, of course, my copywriter, Corey Haynes, and my designer, Zach Stevens. And I am hoping that they argue about this. That is my one goal. I don't think it's going to happen because I think we agree, but I figured we would just start there and maybe you guys can argue. But anyway, so that's what we're going to get into. Gentlemen, anything you want to say in the intro here of the thing before we get into the topic?
I'm doubtful that we're going to argue, and I'm the designer.
I know.
Yeah.
Maybe you can play devil's advocate just for the fun of it. Or I can argue the side of design first. That'd be fun.
Ooh. Okay.
I actually don't know if I could. I don't think
truth.
there's enough. I don't think there's
Or
enough
we could just tell the truth. I think
Yeah.
that's good too.
Yeah, let's do that. So the first thing we want to get into is what is the point of a website? And obviously we're going to do this through the context of design first versus copy first, but what is the point of a website? Corey, why don't you, as the marketer, kick us off?
Yeah, this is something that it's funny because when I was thinking about this topic, I was thinking back to when I was first getting into marketing, and it feels so easy and nice to be like, oh, let me just take this template of this nicely designed website that somebody already built, and that I can just like fill in the blanks and easy peasy, snip snap. I have a nice polished, finished website after this. And then I actually tried to do that, and I realized that that doesn't work super well. The end result is almost always bad because you're working within constraints that you're not supposed to be constrained by. So when we talk about what's the point of a website, right? Like what we want, the end goal is a really good website. And what does a really good website do? A really good website communicates something that compels someone to buy your thing, right? That's really all the point is. You just need people to click that buy button. There's a lot of like, different variations of what that buy button is, and there can be secondary call to actions and lots of other tangential goals of a website. But at the end of the day, your website is your digital storefront, right? It's like, this is the place that people go to in order to buy from you. And the biggest like ingredient to making it successful is what the website says, not how it looks. And so herein lies the problem.
Corey, did you, how many iterations did it take on that first, like, oh, let me get this website up the first time? Like, did it take like, okay, I did it the first time and it just looked terrible and the copy was all weird. Like, how many times did it take you before you're like, okay, I can actually put this out, I think?
Well, like 100, and then I never got to something that was good. Because the problem is that you end up breaking the design. You end up breaking the template, right? Because if you really start to go back to the copy, then you realize that the copy that you want isn't going to fit within the design that you have. So you're trying to change and tweak the design that you have, which ends up making it look worse. And then you kind of keep going around in circles because now your copy isn't that good and your design isn't that good. And that's what I mean by like you end up with a site that you're not happy with, because just going through that process ends up making both your copy and your design worse.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I think that the coming at it from a designer's perspective, I had tried it for a long time to like the thing that I'm always concerned about is this going to be helpful in making that buying decision a lot easier? And what I noticed as I was communicating with designers and trying to design sites for clients, but then not knowing what kind of content they wanted to put on there and how to structure it so that they could communicate everything that was necessary for someone who had never heard about their product to either convert in some capacity, like buying it, or maybe taking a sign up for a newsletter, just anything that was a point of action, that they weren't really good at organizing the content in a selling manner. And the way that I first heard about this was actually from Donald Miller. Donald Miller has a book called, I think it's Marketing Made Simple. It's either Marketing Made Simple or Business Made Simple, one of the two. And he goes through putting his story brand architecture of, you need, like, in order for somebody to understand what you do, they have to understand how it fits into their life and specifically how it helps them solve a problem. So then I started taking that framework of problem, solution, steps or problem, steps necessary to enact a solution, proof that the solution is viable. And those are really the main things. And then I saw the way that Corey articulated it, taking a lot of inspiration from things like those really janky commercials of like, hey, you don't know how to crack an egg. Here's an egg cracker for you. And if you look at those commercials, it's always like, specifically with the egg one, you have someone who is violently smashing an egg like on a frying pan, obviously over the top and over exaggerated, but it helps you understand like, yeah, I really do have a hard time cracking eggs and I have to do that on a daily basis. So if there was some way that I could fix this, it'd be really fantastic. And that's the point of your website. It's to help them understand their problem, articulate why your service or product is a solution to that problem, the steps to the solution, and then proof of that solution's viability with things like case studies, social proof, and then other tangential information that really just expands upon those core tenets. And it's the centrifuge of all your marketing efforts now. Like if someone's going to make a purchase decision, they're going to go to your website to do that. Most likely, with the exception of people who have like, Square or card or point of sale elements. But we work with SaaS companies and that isn't going to happen.
I was going to ask because so I came from some real estate somewhat in the background of my career. And the idea that like your website is your number one marketing asset it's definitely true in all of the industries that we generally work with. And most of our clients, that is the truth. But in a lot of other industries, that's not really the case. Will that catch up? Is that like just like a time thing where it's like, okay, if you're a realtor, your referrals are your number one marketing asset. Is it just a matter of time before other industries, everything is like, no, everyone goes to their website to get the thing about the stuff and press the button?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. We see it more and more just with like market share and volume of e-commerce transactions versus, retail in-person transactions. That's why Amazon stock keeps going up. That's why Shopify stock keeps going up. That's why everybody keeps investing more and more into advertising, into their websites, into just marketing in general, right? Especially online digital marketing. I hate using the word online marketing, digital marketing. It's just, to me, everything I do is pretty much online and digital. So it feels kind of redundant. But to your point, the world is definitely becoming more and more online and more digital first. But as a counterpoint to that too, or not really a counterpoint, but as another interesting thought, just off of that, is that you'd be surprised still how many people who are completely reliant on their website to make sales don't put any effort or thought into their website whatsoever. Like it's a total afterthought.
It's they like their number one driver of revenue, and they're just like, whatever, it's working.
It's literally the most important thing you can do in order to be successful with your business. And people will spend 2 or 3 years just building their product in a basement, putting a lot of time, energy, thought, craftsmanship into their product. And then they'll be like, what, $10 WordPress template can I buy? And then let me spend 30 minutes to fill out this copy and replace what they already have in there so that I can get this live and online. And like, that's just not going to cut it. I'm sorry, but it's crazy to me that people think that they can just put so little time and effort into something like their website. It'd be the equivalent of like, you want to manufacture and sell really high-end luxury bags, and you go and buy the equivalent of a lemonade stand to sell them. Like, how are you going to expect people to find you, to buy from you, to trust you? It just doesn't look great, right? You're not going to have the right copy. You're not going to have the right design. And this is that balance of copy and design. It's not just about copy versus design. what we're talking about is copy first versus design first, more of a process thing. You obviously need both of those, but the reason why you start with copy is because the most important thing is the message. It's the words. It's the things that you say. And we know this from those old commercials that you mentioned, where people are selling really crappy products, but they're selling them really well. And they're selling a lot of those crappy products because they have really good marketing, because they have a really good message, because they have really good copy. And I also seen this online too. It's not just about like old school commercials. And this is where I started to incorporate a lot of these messaging and copywriting frameworks into our processes for SaaS companies, because I would see these really old school sales letters online, where it's literally like a giant wall of text. It is a letter. Sometimes these pages would be thousands of words long, selling something like, in really sketchy industries or selling really questionable products, but they're selling like hotcakes, even though the pages themselves, the website looks so incredibly ugly. But the opposite isn't necessarily true. If you have a really, really nice looking, well-designed website, but people don't understand what you sell, it's never going to sell.
Yeah. I think that's the reason why a design first approach fails, is people who come at this from a design first perspective, they haven't followed the headwaters appropriately. What is it that you are designing? You are designing words mainly, specifically on a website, and then accompanying graphics to support those words. So if you screw the words up, then everything else is going to have a trickle-down effect. And this is one of the reasons why I think that Corey mentioned the templates. And when you have those templates, you're trying to retrofit like a new and improved copy into a template that isn't made for it. It's like trying to take a new, like a Tesla battery engine and put it into a 1960s pickup truck. It's not going to work because it's not made for it. But if you start with copy, then you have a way better starting point, and the headwaters aren't going to be polluted by a bunch of garbage. So that's the biggest reason why I see design first failing, because they don't start where they need to.
So as a designer, Zach, have you ever come across where you're like, okay, I designed this feature page or homepage or whatever it is, and you get the copy and you're like, I don't want, like, this isn't going to make, I have a vision already and it doesn't fit into my vision, and kind of bothers you. Do you have any of that, or has that happened much recently?
Well, I'm kind of biased now because I read Marketing Made Simple I read it before 2020 because I read it before COVID. So I was already applying those principles, and I have been for the past 5 years or so. And since starting Conversion Factory, I've never had bad copy because all of it has come from Corey. So
that's right. Well, I didn't mean bad. I just meant like your vision. It didn't hit already with the vision that you had lying dormant in your head for the client.
Not really.
What's your experience been like with like past freelance gigs, right? Where like someone's like, hey, here's the copy, and you're just like, okay, I just got to run with this.
Well, actually, I started writing copy for clients pretty early in my career.
Right. Yeah.
Because I was like, this is so bad. It would be. Right. It was like they were trying to be Apple, but they didn't have the clout and the knowledge to be Apple. Like you can only get away with those one, like 2-word sentence quips that work if you have a multi-billion-dollar brand that has so much material built on top of it that you don't have to inform people about who you are and what you do and why they should trust you. They just do, because they know exactly who you are and because you are the gold standard for your product. So that's what I had seen before, is it was a lot of people trying to take these big brand tactics and then apply that to their copywriting, but that didn't do a good job of selling something that wasn't commonplace in the market. Like, especially if you're trying to sell a new and innovative product that people don't even fully understand the problem that it solves yet, then you run into a lot of problems because no one understands how you fit into their life. And I think that was the big issue, is that it was a very vague language that was the only kind of things that I could design that would help communicate those were abstract visuals that didn't support and further communicate the importance of this product.
Yeah. Can I tell you an anecdote about Apple
I guess the
really
opposite.
quickly?
Yeah, go ahead.
So it's actually great. I love that you brought up Apple, because Apple really is what a lot of people aspire to, both on the copy and the design aspect, which is interesting because most of the time it's one or the other. And most of the time people mainly care about the design more. You know, they care more about like having a really cool brand and logo and colors, and they want things to look really good, even if the substance isn't great, which again is another reason why people usually gravitate more towards a design first process by default, which is not great. But Apple is a great case study in this too, because these quippy, short little phrases that Apple's become known for weren't just by accident. In fact, the Think Different tagline wasn't their original tagline, and it sort of became what they were known for and started dictating a lot of their marketing strategy and copywriting strategy, because the Think Different campaign was so successful in helping them build market share. Because at one point, Apple was the challenger. Everybody had PCs, everybody had Microsoft, everybody was used to, I mean, not even just Microsoft and PC, but just in general, there was like, Apple was not the standard for a PC, right? And so they needed to figure out a way to attract contrarians and innovators and early adopters and people who were interested in something that wasn't the standard. So they came with the tagline, Think Different, because people who think differently would resonate with that message, right? And then that sort of became the de facto thing. And I think the meaning actually has changed a lot over time, because ironically, Apple is still the standard now, and everybody agrees that Apple is way cooler than Microsoft or any other PC, but we still think different. It's like, no, you don't. It's just sort of
this is what, yeah, this role's totally flipped. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the power of design and branding right there, is that it will make you think things that aren't true.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. It becomes like a cult, and you just start agreeing with things that you don't even know the meaning of.
What was their original tagline? Do you know?
Oh, I don't know.
Before Think Different?
I mean, I feel like they didn't really have one. The closest thing that I could think of is, because Think Different came from the black and white video campaign, the Here's to the Rebels, or Here's to the Crazy Ones, the Outcasts, the Rebels, where they had all these beautiful shots of Einstein, Picasso, Thomas Edison, Amelia Earhart, the rebels who thought differently. The only thing that comes close to that as far as their marketing path would be the 1984 campaign, which was that 1984 will not be 1984. But this was before. This was before I feel like this was before taglines were kind of solidified as a non-changeable asset.
So you're kind of just like, this is our Think Different commercial. It was like the name of another one.
Well, and I mean, you can think of and that's not even really like their core tagline anymore, because I hardly see it used anywhere. It's just the most famous one. The only one that I could think of that hasn't changed for the longest time is McDonald's, which is the I'm loving it.
It's I'm loving it. Actually,
oh, sorry, my mistake. Or probably Nike, just do it. But anyway, the point being is
also was added on much later, by the way.
How is it, like, decade wise? Where does that fit in?
Man, I read Shoe Dog, so I should know this, but I have a terrible memory. But I know that there's like a whole chapter where where Just Do It is introduced, and that helps the company's trajectory. This could be a whole thing. We should do some more research on taglines. I don't know when exactly it was, but also just to cite my sources here, the original tagline for Apple was the power to be your best. And then in 1997, that's when they introduced Think Different. And that's been their most successful campaign and use of a tagline since then.
Yeah. I mean, but by 1997, though, they were pretty, they were more than a startup. They were doing millions and millions of dollars in revenue. They were not performing very well at that point because I think Steve Jobs had just come back.
Right.
And then
it
cut
was
everything.
Still,
but
yeah, Apple was struggling a lot still.
Yeah, we have deviated quite a bit from the copy first. Point being that quippy copy doesn't fit when you are in the context of brands that we are working with, which is, I have a problem to solve. How can you help me solve it and educate somebody as to why your solution is beneficial? So there's one analogy in here that Corey had written down, which I find absolutely fascinating and perfect. The
chef's kiss.
It is a chef's kiss one, especially given the current climate around these films. Starting with design is like making a Marvel movie in the last couple of years where you spend hundreds of millions of dollars on special effects, but the plot and story is garbage. So how does a copy first approach fix Marvel so we can get paid millions of dollars to now write their stories for them? But then also, how does it fix why is it better than design first?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, the base ingredient here is the story. And like you mentioned earlier with building a story brand and all the other examples of like just the way that people understand things, people communicate through stories, and stories are a journey from point A to point B. And when you're trying to sell something to somebody, you're trying to tell them a story about how they can go from their point A to wherever they want to go, wherever their point B is. And so your landing page and your copy should reflect that journey that you want to help them go through. You don't take them on that journey. It's not you aren't the journey. You are giving them the magic pill, the magic bean, the bridge, the superpower
lightsaber
they need. Exactly. The lightsaber, the force sensitivity they need in order to go from point A to point B. Right. Yeah. And there's always a logical flow to it. Right. So I'm not going to talk about all the ingredients because there's a lot of different frameworks and ideas for that. But the point is that there is a logical flow for how people understand how you can help them get from their point A to point B and wherever they want to go. And it's all dependent on the copy and the message. And then the way that you package up that copy and that message is what I would consider to be the design, and the presentation of that information. But the order of the way that you tell that story matters. How much information is in each one of those components of that story matters. Just like what we were talking about before with Lord of the Rings versus Star Wars, the story matters a ton. And there's so many different elements to the story. In the same way, there's so many different elements to copy that you have to be very meticulous about each of the components within your copywriting so that when you do package it up with the design, it's something that has legs and it's going to sell.
I feel like I've been #blessed because I work with you guys who are like on the same page with this. Like I can imagine a world where there's a designer who thinks design first, and then the copywriter who thinks it's copy first. But I feel like it seems like that design is meant when it comes to building landing pages and websites, that the design it fits so much better at going second. Like it feels like, okay, this is not only is it that, they can have fun and make the design beautiful and do all this stuff, but they also have these parameters that they're like, hey, you have to stay in these guidelines, and these guidelines are the site. The copy is the site. Like the guidelines that they've been written already are there to basically like bumpers to keep you so that you can roll all the way down and hit the pins at the end. But I'm glad that you guys are in agreement because it would be really bad if you were. Sorry, Zach, you were going to say something.
Well, I think I would say there's two kinds of design that we need to consider here. Like there's capital D design, which is just the creation of anything with intention. And then there's lowercase d design, which is the practice of making things look aesthetically pleasing. And design, like if you want to be a real designer, like capital D design, you should consider the architecture of a website and what it's supposed to do so that it's function doesn't get altered and ruined by its form, and form comes secondary. That's where I think the real issue is that people have this idea for like a gorgeous template or a gorgeous hero section, and when the copy doesn't fit that template the way that they have designed it, then you run into issues. But they're missing the point, which is a higher calling of, a true design and architecture. I can think of, there is some stuff that comes to mind where there wasn't necessarily pushback, but maybe it's things where, like, I'm thinking of scenarios where, like, we've had to include a lot of different material into a hero section, and I've suggested things to Corey like, hey, have we considered, maybe doing this? We could include a testimonial here, or, maybe we have like 7 to 10 logos that we want to show, and instead of having a logo pool, maybe we'll put those up in the hero instead, and we can have them scroll across. But I'm not like taking away the content, because I feel like the message is still important, and the trick with design is to work the copy and the content in a way that still feels branded, that still feels like it has good hierarchy, good flow, there's good rhythm, and that the graphics that you're creating alongside the copy are supporting the core message. But I think that is true design, is can you work with this copy and be very creative in the way that you display it, so that all the information is arranged in a way that helps tell the story and move that person from point A to point B so that they're ready to make a purchase decision.
I like that distinction between capital D design and lowercase d design. And I think you could make an argument that copywriting is actually capital D design, choosing what information should be here and what the order is, and creating something with intention, right? It's thinking through, what do I need to say and how do I need to present this information in order to get a sale, right? That really is capital D design.
Yeah, I should change my title from, well, I shouldn't change my title. People who are so focused on aesthetic should change their title to like landing page esthetician.
Artist. Yeah.
Instead of designer.
Yeah.
Because if you do want to be a designer, I feel like you need to accept that higher calling, which is capital D design, true design and crafting with intention.
So I'm a true designer then. I'm the real designer here.
Whoa. Hey, man.
Oh, jeez. Don't do this.
Yeah, we don't need to do this right now. I'll see you on the mats, Corey.
Yeah. Oh, they're going to fight over it.
I do want to bring this up because I think that it's a topic that I've seen like on YouTube or on LinkedIn, where people always say like, and I hear this from marketers, and I know they're just doing it because it's clickbait, and the only reason they're writing it is to piss designers off, because designers are the most vocal people when they see stuff like this, which is what converts best is ugly. And I want to unpack that because I think that it's a load of bull. Because it doesn't have to be ugly. It's and you see this all the time, where like they'll intentionally make good content arranged poorly. But the flip side is that they arrange bad content nicely, but you can still arrange good content in a nice way too. And there's no reason that what converts best is ugly. It's not ugly by choice. I think that what is happening is you have good content that is not arranged appropriately. And this is one of the big reasons why I wanted to work with someone like Corey, was because it's like, I know how to arrange things that are said well in a good way that still honors design, and it doesn't make me feel like the bastard child of my industry. But someone who can also appreciate aesthetic and like give me good words to arrange and good supporting content to actually give this thing wings. Corey, what do you think about that little quip that you wrote?
Yeah, I think maybe we can split this out into capital U ugly and lowercase u ugly.
No, dude.
Because when I think of what converts best is ugly, quote unquote, is sometimes what I mean is it wouldn't be your first choice for how you would choose to arrange or display something. And so you might think like, oh, that's ugly because if I really had my druthers, I would do it differently. But sometimes you do need to pack a lot of information in so that it's a little bit more, it's all together, right? Or it's a little bit more cluttered, or there isn't as much white space as you would choose, or, it's just maybe not your first choice, right? What was that, uppercase? Was that capital U? So whatever the opposite is, lowercase ugly is like, this actually looks bad. And I definitely don't think that things need to or should look bad. In fact, I really hate when people reference like, oh, Craigslist.com looks super ugly and it makes $1 billion a year or whatever. I'm like, cool, that's probably the exception to the rule versus the rule itself.
Yeah.
And if you really are like trying to make something ugly, that just feels so nonsensical to me. Because I do actually think that making things beautiful, designed well, aesthetically pleasing actually helps. I feel like we have some stats somewhere, but like good design, especially nowadays, correlates really, really high with trust and with perceived value and quality. And I think you could especially take this rubric and this kind of rule of thumb to the world of like e-commerce and retail products, because you'll almost never see a premium tier product that is ugly or presented in an ugly way. I mean, think about anything luxury, or think about anything that people would consider to be like top value, or, a premium type of product or service, and it's almost never ugly. Sure, you can get away with something being ugly, and maybe sometimes something being a little bit ugly can be like a zag strategy where it just stands out, and that can work a little bit. But I don't think it's like a strategy, Well, you could purposely make something ugly. It's crazy.
And that eventually becomes in the eye of the beholder, because for a while, you can look at things like the luxury brands like Balenciaga or Prada or Burberry, and some of the stuff that they create now is like, I don't know if I want to wear that. But like you said, that's more of a zag strategy compared to is it actually ugly, or is it trying to be aesthetically pleasing by not being aesthetically pleasing, by being trendy and faddish? And I think that's one of the things that people get hung up on as well. It's like, yeah, but ugly is super popular now. It's like, sort of like we'll talk about trends versus fads at some other point.
Yeah.
I think it's settled. I think copy first wins, right? I mean, we're all in agreement.
I think so. Can I add one more anecdote to that, just as another quick story?
Yeah.
Is you mentioned earlier about we were asking Zach about experiences with people presenting bad copy to him, having to design it. I've had a couple of instances where designers come to me with a really good design that I have to then write copy for, and that's also really difficult. And the first couple times, I didn't really think very much of it, because I was like, oh, again, this is easier, or this should be easier, because now
fill in the blank.
I have something to work within. It's just a Mad Lib fill in the blank, right? But then you end up just overthinking everything, and you end up making headlines shorter in order to fit the design. And you think okay, this only allots for one sentence, but really I want to say two, or I need 3 sentences and only allots 1, or, just the information that you need to display or the layout you need to display the information you want to convey isn't available, which is frustrating. And one of the last times that this happened, I was very much in the camp of copy first by this point, but I had in a backlog a project to redo the homepage, and me thinking copy first, thought, okay, well, I'm just going to write the copy when I get to that, and then I'll hand it off to our designer. Well, the designer saw it in the backlog, and he thought, I got some room on my plate. I'll just start designing it right now. So he started redesigning the homepage without me knowing, and then came back to me and was like, hey, I have this done. And I was like, oh, wait, no, so that's not how we're going to do things. And then his feelings were hurt because he thought I didn't like the design, but it was more that that's not the process that I wanted to go through. And that it was too hard for me to think through how to make copy that I haven't written yet fit into this new design and layout that he had created. And so anyways, it became this big issue, and it was fine. I mean, like, we were totally cool by the end of it, but those types of miscommunications are really hard and very counterproductive too, because just in my experience, I don't think there's been one time where writing the copy first has led to a lot of back and forth between the design where we're like, this just doesn't work, and like, this is hard to work. But it's almost every single time I've tried to do design first and then copy later that it's like, we got to go back to the drawing board because this isn't going to work, and this isn't going to fit, and we got to redo this and this and this and this.
If you have to, just do it together as well, because then you can do things like there's a very happy medium here where art and copy sit in the same room and then wireframe out the page together and approach it from a very low fidelity perspective where there's not a ton of overinvestment, and then you're both aligned, and then you can be far more effective, which we've done a couple times. But like, I mean, Corey writes copy so fast that it's like it makes sense to just have him do it and then make the words that he writes look beautiful.
Or you can just be me and not write any copy or do any design, and you just put it in the webflow, put it in the website, which is
and then you get all the credit.
Yeah, I'm like,
look what I made.
Your site's live. I get the big reveal at the end where I push the live button. That's great.
Yeah. Nick has the baton at the end.
Do. Yeah, I get to run through the checkered flag or something like that. Okay, well, I think that wraps it up. I'm glad that we're all on the same page. It means more button clicks for the clients and things like that. So, great conversation. Next week, we will be talking about Hunger Games versus some other terrible teen story. I don't know, Twilight maybe or something. No, I'm just kidding.
B-tier sci-fi.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah. But yeah, any final words?
I don't think so. I think we settled it. And if anyone else has any questions or comments on this, we're all ears.
Smash
but we're
that
probably
like
not going to
button.
change our minds.
Yeah.
Smash the like button.
Send this to 10 friends, or else you'll go to hell or something.
Bad juju for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Okay. Sweet. All right. Well, we're signing off, and we will see you next time on the factory floor. Done.